I'm Maya Patel, 29, standing in the crystal ballroom of the Four Seasons in San Francisco, watching my family celebrate my younger brother Arjun's MBA graduation from Stanford. My mother's voice carries across the room as she tells yet another guest, at least one of our children has ambition. Maya just sits at a desk all day doing, what is it again? Reception work? Reception work. That's what they've called my job for the past decade. The lazy daughter who dropped out of Berkeley's computer science program to become a bank receptionist. The one with no drive, no ambition, no future beyond answering phones and filing papers. The family embarrassment who chose the easiest path while her siblings climbed corporate ladders. What they don't know is that I've spent those 10 years building one of the most innovative financial technology companies in the world. That while they mock my desk job, I've been revolutionizing how money moves globally. That the bank where they think I answer phones? I bought it 3 years ago. The entire thing. And it's just one small piece of my fintech empire. In approximately 15 minutes, when Richard Chin, the CEO of Pacific National Bank, arrives to give the keynote speech, my carefully maintained cover is going to be blown in the most spectacular way possible. Because Richard doesn't just work for the bank, he works for me. And he has no idea I've been hiding this from my family. Before I tell you how a decade of deliberate deception is about to explode in front of San Francisco's financial elite, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been called lazy while building an empire? Have you let your family believe you're failing while you're actually reshaping entire industries? Drop a comment below, and please subscribe if you want to hear more stories about quiet revolutionaries who let their success speak louder than their effort. Growing up in Palo Alto as the eldest daughter of immigrant parents who'd sacrificed everything for the American dream meant carrying the weight of their unlived ambitions. My father, Raj Patel, had been an engineer in India who drove taxis in San Francisco for 15 years before finally landing a position at a tech company. My mother, Meera, gave up her teaching career to work double shifts at a dry cleaners, saving every penny for her children's education. "We came here with nothing," was their constant refrain. So you must become everything. Everything, in the Patel household, meant visible, traditional success. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, or failure, those were the only options. And success had to be loud, obvious, something they could point to at community gatherings and say, "Look what our sacrifices built." My younger brother Arjun understood the assignment perfectly. Straight A's, student body president, internships at Goldman Sachs, early admission to Stanford Business School. He vibrated with the kind of ambitious energy our parents recognized and rewarded. My sister Dia, the baby of the family, had chosen medicine. Currently in her residency at UCSF, she was on track to become the cardiologist my parents had dreamed of birthing. Then there was me. The quiet one. The one who preferred coding in my room to networking at parties. Who saw patterns in systems others missed. Who understood that the loudest person in the room was rarely the most powerful. Maya needs more drive, I overheard my mother tell my aunt when I was 16. She's smart enough, but so passive. No fire. No hunger. She's lazy, my father added bluntly. Brilliant but lazy. Waste of potential. Lazy. Because I didn't perform my efforts. Because I worked in silence rather than spectacle. Because I built things in my room instead of broadcasting every small achievement. By 17, I'd created an app that optimized microtransactions, reducing processing time by 73%. I showed it to my parents, excited about the implications for global finance. "That's nice, beta," my mother said absently, more interested in Arjun's debate team trophy. "But what about your college applications? Harvard wants to see leadership, not hiding in your room with computers." This could revolutionize how banks handle. "Banks?" my father interrupted. "You want to work in a bank? Counting other people's money? Where's the ambition in that?" I stopped sharing my projects after that. What was the point? They wanted visible achievement, not invisible innovation. The breaking point came during my sophomore year at Berkeley. I was majoring in computer science, but my real education was happening outside the classroom. I'd connected with a group of fintech pioneers who saw what I saw, that the entire global banking system was built on infrastructure from the 1970s, held together with digital duct tape and institutional inertia. We could rebuild it, I told my study group, showing them the architecture I'd designed. From the ground up. Make it faster, more secure, more accessible. That's a $1 trillion idea, said James, who would later become my co-founder. Then let's build it, I said. But building it meant dropping out. The opportunity was time-sensitive, regulations were shifting, technology was ready, and waiting 2 more years for a degree would mean missing the window entirely. The conversation with my parents went exactly as expected. Dropping out? My mother's voice could have shattered glass. Like that Facebook boy? You think you're him? I think I have an idea worth pursuing, I said carefully. Ideas don't pay bills, my father snapped. Degrees pay bills. Jobs pay bills. What will people say? That we raised a dropout? That you raised an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur, my mother spat the word like profanity. Fancy name for unemployed. No. You'll finish your degree, get a proper job, then play with your ideas on weekends if you must. The opportunity won't wait. Then it's not a real opportunity. My father declared. Real opportunities don't require you to throw away your future. I had a choice, their approval or my vision. I chose vision, but I chose it quietly. I told them I was taking a semester off for an internship. Then another semester for research. By the time they realized I wasn't going back, I'd already incorporated my company and raised initial funding from angel investors who saw what my parents couldn't. She's working at a bank now, my mother told relatives, unable to admit her daughter was a dropout. Entry level, but it's stable. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did work at a bank, Pacific National, where we'd partnered to test our payment processing system. I had a desk there, technically answered phones when needed, and let my family believe that was the extent of my ambition. At least she's employed, became their grudging acknowledgement. Not successful like Arjun or Dia, but employed. What they didn't know was that my entry-level position was actually a technology partnership worth millions. That the phone I answered connected directly to venture capitalists and financial regulators. That my desk was the command center for a fintech revolution. NovaPay, the company I'd built with James and 3 other dropout geniuses, started small. We focused on one problem, international microtransactions. Sending $5 to family in another country shouldn't cost $3 in fees and take 3 days. Our solution made it instant and nearly free. Within a year, we were processing $100 million in transactions monthly. Within 2 years, major banks were licensing our technology. Within 3 years, we were the invisible backbone of half the digital payments in Southeast Asia. But to my family, I was still Maya the receptionist. Maya the lazy one. Maya the disappointment who sat at a desk all day doing something with computers. You should see Arjun's office, my mother would say during family dinners. Corner view, executive assistant, real success. Maybe he can help you find something better than, what is it you do again? I work in financial technology, I'd say. Yes, computers, she'd wave dismissively. But what's your title? What's your salary? These things matter, Maya. My title was CEO. My salary was whatever I wanted it to be. But those weren't answers that fit their worldview, so I kept quiet and let them believe what they needed to believe. The hardest part was watching them struggle financially while I had more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. When my father's car broke down, I anonymously paid for the repairs through a bank error in his favor. When my mother needed surgery, I ensured their insurance mysteriously covered everything with no copay. When Dia's medical school loans came due, they discovered a scholarship that paid them off entirely. We're so blessed, my mother would say. Such good fortune lately. Maybe Maya's bringing us luck, Arjun once joked. Even failures have their purpose. Even failures have their purpose. I smiled and nodded, thinking of the $50 million Series C funding we'd just closed. The acquisition opportunities started rolling in around year 5. Google offered $500 million. We said no. Amazon offered $750 million. We said no. The numbers kept climbing, but we weren't interested in selling. We were interested in buying. You want to acquire a bank? James asked when I proposed it. An actual, physical bank? Pacific National. Where we started. They're struggling, and their infrastructure is perfect for what we need next. That's audacious. That's necessary. We can't revolutionize banking from the outside forever. Eventually, we need to become the bank. The acquisition took 18 months and $400 million, but we did it quietly, through shell companies and investment vehicles that couldn't be traced back to me. One day, Pacific National Bank was a struggling regional institution. The next, it was the testing ground for the future of finance. I kept my desk there. Still answered phones occasionally. The staff who'd known me as that quiet girl from the fintech partnership now unknowingly worked for me. I promoted Richard Chen to CEO. He was brilliant and deserved it, but kept my ownership hidden behind layers of corporate structure. Still at the same bank? My father asked during Diwali. No promotions? No advancement? Maya, where's your ambition? I'm comfortable where I am, I said. Comfortable, he repeated with disgust. Your brother just made VP at McKinsey. Your sister is chief resident. And you're comfortable. Different paths, I suggested. No, he said firmly. There's successful and there's lazy. You've chosen lazy. Lazy. While running a company with 800 employees across 12 countries. Lazy. While processing $10 billion in transactions annually. Lazy. While holding 47 patents in financial technology. But fighting their perception felt pointless. They'd built their entire worldview around their children's visible achievements. Arjun's MBA from Stanford. Dia's white coat. My invisible empire didn't fit their framework, so they couldn't see it. The invitation to Arjun's MBA graduation came with a note from my mother, please dress professionally. Important people will be there, including speakers from major banks. Try to network, maybe someone can help you advance beyond reception work. Network with people who used my technology. Advance beyond the empire I'd built. The irony was almost too much. I chose a simple black dress, professional but understated. No logos, no labels, nothing that suggested the net worth Forbes had just pegged at $3.2 billion. Just Maya, the disappointment, coming to support her successful brother. The Four Seasons ballroom was packed with Stanford's finest, future CEOs, venture capitalists, the next generation of financial leaders. I recognized half of them from pitch meetings they didn't know I'd been in, sitting quietly in the corner while James presented our technology. Maya. Arjun found me near the entrance, resplendent in his Tom Ford suit. You made it. How'd you get time off from the bank? I have some flexibility, I said. Must be nice, having such an easy job, he said, not meanly but with the casual condescension of someone who'd never questioned the family narrative. No stress, no real responsibility. Sometimes I envy you. You really don't, I thought but didn't say. My parents held court near the stage, accepting congratulations for raising such an accomplished son. My mother wore the sari she saved for special occasions. My father stood straighter than usual, pride radiating from every pore. 2 doctors and an MBA, a family friend gushed. You must be so proud. We are blessed, my mother replied, then caught sight of me. Oh, and Maya's here too. She works at a bank. Clerical work, but honest work. Clerical work. I thought of the code I'd written last week that would process more transactions in an hour than most banks handled in a month. Honest work indeed. The ceremony began with the usual pomp, speeches about bright futures and changing the world, promises of innovation and disruption from people who'd never disrupted anything harder than their sleep schedules. Then the announcement that changed everything. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Richard Chen, CEO of Pacific National Bank, recently named Financial Innovator of the Year for the bank's groundbreaking digital transformation. My blood froze. Richard hadn't mentioned he was speaking. More importantly, Richard had no idea I'd been hiding my ownership from my family. He knew me as Maya Patel, majority shareholder and shadow architect of the bank's transformation. He had no reason to protect my secret. Richard took the stage with his usual confidence, beginning with platitudes about innovation and adaptation. Then he shifted to specifics about Pacific National's transformation. 3 years ago, we were a dying regional bank. Today, we're at the forefront of financial technology. This transformation didn't happen by accident. It happened because of visionary leadership that saw potential where others saw obsolescence. Please don't, I silently begged. I want to share something with you, he continued. The real story of innovation isn't always what it seems. Sometimes the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected places. Or people. His eyes swept the room and found mine. His face lit up with recognition and something like relief. In fact, he said, we have the architect of Pacific National's transformation here with us today. Someone who preferred to work behind the scenes but whose vision has revolutionized not just our bank but the entire financial technology sector. No. 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 Maya Patel, would you please stand? Every head in the room turned. My mother's face went white. My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Arjun looked like someone had hit him with a tranquilizer dart. I stood slowly, 10 years of carefully maintained anonymity about to shatter. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard continued, clearly enjoying himself now, you're looking at the majority owner of Pacific National Bank. The founder and CEO of NovaPay, which processes over $10 billion in transactions annually. The holder of 47 patents in financial technology. Forbes' youngest self-made billionaire, though she declined to be photographed for the article. The silence was deafening. Then chaos. That's impossible, my mother's voice cut through the murmur. Maya works reception. She answers phones. She's a genius who revolutionized global finance while maintaining the humblest cover I've ever seen, Richard finished. I've worked for her for 3 years, and I'm still amazed by her ability to hide in plain sight. Worked for her? Arjun's voice cracked. You work for Maya? Technically, we all do. Everyone who uses digital banking is using Maya's technology. She just prefers to let others take the credit. He turned back to me. Maya, would you say a few words? I know you value privacy, but I think this audience could benefit from hearing how real innovation happens. I looked at my family, my parents frozen in shock, Arjun's worldview visibly crumbling, Dia's eyes wide with something between awe and horror. I prefer to let my work speak for itself, I said quietly. Your work is screaming, Richard countered. NovaPay just signed partnerships with the central banks of 6 countries. Your transaction protocol is becoming the global standard. You can't hide that level of success forever. She owns a bank, my father's voice was barely a whisper. Our Maya owns a bank? She owns significantly more than that, Richard said cheerfully. But Pacific National is where she started, so it holds special meaning. Right, Maya? I wanted to sink into the floor. This wasn't how I'd planned any of this. But Richard was on a roll, high on the drama of revelation. The interview you gave to TechCrunch, anonymously, of course, said that innovation requires invisibility. That the loudest person in the room is rarely the most effective. I think your family is seeing that principle in action. There must be some mistake, my mother insisted. Maya isn't, she doesn't, she's lazy. She's always been lazy. No ambition, no drive. With respect, Mrs. Patel, Richard interrupted gently, your daughter has more drive than anyone I've ever met. She just doesn't perform it. She works 18-hour days, revolutionizes entire industries, and builds billion-dollar companies. She just does it quietly. $1 billion? Arjun echoed faintly. Oh, did I not mention? NovaPay's last valuation was $4.2 billion. Your sister is worth approximately $3.2 billion personally. Though she lives like someone making $50,000 a year, which I'll never understand. He looked at me with fond exasperation. Seriously, Maya, you need a better car. The Honda Civic doesn't match your net worth. The Civic runs fine, I muttered. See? Richard addressed the audience. That's real wealth. When you have nothing to prove, you don't need to prove anything. The rest of his speech blurred past. I sat down, feeling the weight of every stare. My family hadn't moved, still frozen in various states of shock. When Richard finally finished, the applause was thunderous. But I only heard the silence from my family's table. I tried to escape during the reception, but Richard intercepted me. I'm sorry if I overstepped, he said, though his grin suggested otherwise. But when I saw them dismiss you as clerical staff, I couldn't stay silent. I had reasons for keeping it quiet. I'm sure you did. But Maya, you've changed the world. That deserves recognition, especially from family. Before I could respond, Arjun appeared at my elbow. We need to talk. I let him lead me to a quiet corner, where my parents and Dia were waiting. The family tribunal assembled. Explain, my father demanded. Now. So I did. The app at 17 they'd ignored. The opportunity at Berkeley they'd dismissed. The company built in silence while they called me lazy. The bank acquisition, the patents, the global partnerships. 10 years of revolution disguised as reception work. But why hide it? My mother asked, tears streaming down her face. Why let us think you were a failure? Because you'd already decided I was one. When I tried to show you my work, you called it playing with computers. When I wanted to drop out to pursue the opportunity, you said I was throwing my life away. It became easier to be what you expected than fight for recognition of something you couldn't understand. We would have understood, my father started. Would you? Or would you have found ways to diminish it? Would a fintech company have been less impressive than Arjun's MBA? Would revolutionizing banking matter less than Dia's surgical residency? You measure success in degrees and titles and visible achievement. My success was invisible by design. $3.2 billion, Arjun said quietly. You're worth $3.2 billion, and you let me lecture you about networking at bank events. You were trying to help. In your own way. I was being a condescending ass. We all were. Yes, I agreed. You were. The honesty hit like a physical blow. My mother sank into a chair. We called you lazy, she whispered. For 10 years, we called our brilliant daughter lazy because she didn't perform her effort the way we expected. Performance doesn't equal production, I said. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most effective, Dia finished. Richard said. God, Maya, we failed you. We failed you so completely. You loved me the only way you knew how. With expectations I couldn't meet and definitions I couldn't fit. That's not failure, it's limitation. Don't, my father said roughly. Don't forgive us so easily. We deserve to sit with this. To understand what we missed, what we dismissed. What you dismissed built something beautiful, I said. Maybe focus on that instead of the dismissal. How? My mother asked. How do we move forward knowing we spent 10 years belittling a genius? Calling ambition laziness? Missing miracles because they didn't look like medical degrees? By doing better. By asking questions instead of making assumptions. By learning that success has more faces than the ones you recognize. Will you teach us? Arjun asked. About your work? Your actual work? It's pretty technical. We can learn. We owe you that much. We owe you everything. I looked at my family, brilliant in their own ways but blinded by narrow definitions. Saw the genuine desire to understand, to bridge the decade-wide gap between perception and reality. Okay, I agreed. But first, you have to stop calling me lazy. You're the least lazy person I know, my father said firmly. You just work in ways we couldn't see. That's our blindness, not your laziness. The reception continued around us, but our corner had become a confessional. My mother pulled up articles about NovaPay on her phone, crying as she read about innovations she dismissed as playing with computers. My father stared at patent filings bearing my name, shaking his head at the complexity he'd called lacking ambition. Arjun and Dia peppered me with questions, trying to understand how their lazy sister had built an empire under their noses. The anonymous donations to the hospital, Dia said suddenly. The new cardiac wing. That was you? Guilty. The scholarship fund that paid off my loans? Also guilty. Dad's car repairs? Mom's surgery coverage? Guilty and guilty. You've been taking care of us while we insulted you, my mother said brokenly. What kind of people does that make us? Family, I said simply. Flawed, limited, but family. Richard appeared with champagne. Toasting the cat coming out of the bag? Something like that, I accepted a glass. For what it's worth, he said to my parents, your daughter is the most remarkable person I've ever worked for. She sees possibilities others miss, builds solutions others say are impossible, and does it all without needing credit or recognition. That's rare. We're learning that, my father said quietly. Good. Because she's about to change the world again. The central bank partnerships? That's just the beginning. Maya's building something that will make traditional banking obsolete within a decade. While sitting at a desk, Arjun added with a small smile. Our lazy sister, making the rest of us look like we're standing still. Motion isn't progress, I said. Sometimes the biggest revolutions happen in stillness. Is that a Buddha quote? Dia asked. No, that's a Maya quote. I have those now. Comes with the billions. We laughed, the first real family laugh in years that included me as myself, not the diminished version they'd needed me to be. The rest of the reception was surreal. Word had spread about the secret billionaire sister, and suddenly everyone wanted to meet me. The same relatives who'd pitted me an hour ago now wanted investment advice. The family friends who'd compared me unfavorably to my siblings now praised my strategic humility. Vultures, my mother muttered, shielding me from another eager approach. Where were they when they thought you were nobody? I was never nobody, I corrected. I was just nobody they could see. As the evening wound down, my family clustered around me with the protectiveness of people who'd just discovered treasure they'd been stepping over for years. Come home with us, my mother insisted. We have so much to talk about. 10 years to catch up on. I have a flight to Singapore in the morning. Central bank meeting. Of course you do, my father said wonderingly. Our daughter meets with central banks. How did we miss this? By looking for the wrong signs, I said gently. But you can start looking for the right ones now. Will you let us? Dia asked. After everything, will you let us know you? The real you? I thought about the decade of distance, the careful maintenance of their disappointment, the freedom their low expectations had given me to build without scrutiny. Then I thought about the loneliness of success without witness, the weight of hiding light under bushels of their making. We can try, I said. But you have to meet me where I am, not where you think I should be. Deal, they said in unison. As we prepared to leave, Arjun pulled me aside. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not just for tonight, but for every time I made you small. Every joke about your easy job, every condescending offer to help you advance. You were advancing beyond my comprehension, and I was too arrogant to see it. You saw what you were trained to see. Visible effort, traditional success. I chose invisible impact instead. Why? Because visible effort often impedes actual progress. While everyone's performing their hustle, someone needs to be building the future. I chose building. Teach me, he asked. Not the technical stuff, I know my limits. But the mindset. The ability to work without witness, to build without applause. I want to learn that. It starts with understanding that the audience isn't the point. The work is the point. Everything else is just noise. He nodded slowly. I've been making a lot of noise. You've been successful in the way you knew how. That's not wrong, just limited. You can expand now. With my billionaire sister as a guide? With your sister as a guide. The billions are just keeping score. We rejoined the family, who were still processing the evening's revelations. My mother had pulled up my anonymous TechCrunch interview and was reading quotes aloud. True innovation requires the willingness to be misunderstood for extended periods, she read. That's you? That's your philosophy? Among others. The most powerful position in any room is the one nobody notices until it's too late. She looked up. We noticed too late. You noticed eventually. That's what matters. No, my father said firmly. What matters is that you succeeded despite us, not because of us. That's a failure we'll carry forever. Then carry it lightly, I suggested. Heavy guilt serves no one. Light awareness might help us all. Outside the Four Seasons, waiting for our cars, my family stood differently around me. Not the protective circle of before, but an inclusive one. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't adjacent to their success but central to their understanding. Tuesday dinner, my mother asked hopefully. I'll make your favorite. We can talk about whatever you're comfortable sharing. I can do Tuesday. But I'm bringing dessert from that place you love. You remember? I remember everything. I just stopped sharing when sharing meant shrinking. We'll do better, she promised. We'll learn to see success in stillness, ambition in quiet, revolution in reception desks. That's all I ever wanted. To be seen for who I am, not who you expected me to be. My Uber arrived first, the same Honda Civic Richard had mocked, because old habits die hard and I saw no reason to perform well if I'd rather deploy. That's really your car? Dia asked. The billionaire drives a 10-year-old Civic? The billionaire drives what works. Everything else is performance. We have so much to unlearn, Arjun said. Good thing I'm patient. Built an empire while you called me lazy. I can wait while you learn to see. I drove away from the Four Seasons, from the explosion of a decade's careful fiction, from a family just beginning to know me. My phone buzzed with messages, Richard apologizing again for the dramatic reveal, reporters who'd somehow gotten my number, team members who'd seen social media posts about the secret billionaire CEO. But I ignored them all, driving through San Francisco in my practical car toward my practical apartment where I'd continue my impractical work of reshaping global finance. The lazy daughter. The one without ambition. The receptionist who answered phones while building revolutions. Tomorrow, I'd fly to Singapore and continue changing the world quietly. But tonight, for the first time in 10 years, my family knew who I was. Not fully, that would take time. But truly, without the filter of their expectations. It was a start. 6 months later, I stood in my parents' living room, watching my mother navigate NovaPay's consumer app. So this is what you built, she said wonderingly. I use it every day and never knew. That's the point. Good technology is invisible. It just works. Like good daughters, my father suggested. Invisible but essential? I was never invisible, Dad. You just weren't looking in the right places. We see you now, he said firmly. All of you. The quiet revolutionary. The still water that runs deeper than oceans. Poetic. I've been reading about you. Interviews, profiles, analyses. Do you know what they call you? The ghost CEO. The invisible hand of fintech. The woman who changed banking from a reception desk. All true. And we called you lazy. He shook his head. How's that for irony? It's not irony, it's misunderstanding. You equated motion with progress, volume with value. Easy mistakes in a noisy world. You're defending us again. I'm contextualizing. There's a difference. Arjun arrived with Dia, both carrying laptops. Ready for our lesson? Once a month, I taught them about fintech, not the technical details, but the philosophy. How to see systems beyond their surfaces. How to find inefficiencies in accepted norms. How to build solutions that made current problems obsolete rather than just manageable. Today we're talking about digital currencies, I said. Bitcoin? Dia asked. Beyond Bitcoin. The entire concept of value exchange. Why do we accept that moving money should take days? Why do we pay percentages to middlemen for mathematical transactions? What is money, really, beyond shared belief? You're blowing my mind already, Arjun said. Good. Blown minds are open minds. Open minds see possibilities. We spent hours exploring concepts that challenged everything they'd assumed about finance, technology, and success itself. My parents listened with the intensity of students, taking notes, asking questions that showed they were trying, really trying, to understand not just my work but my way of thinking. I have an announcement, I said as we wrapped up. NovaPay is going public next year. Public, my mother gasped. That means? That means the invisible becomes visible. The ghost CEO will have to show her face. The lazy daughter will be on the cover of Fortune. How do you feel about that? My father asked carefully. Ready. I've built what I needed to build in shadows. Now it's time to inspire others to build their own revolutions, visible or not. We'll be there, my mother said firmly. Front row at the NYSE, watching our daughter ring the bell. Our daughter the billionaire, my father added, still testing the words. Your daughter, I corrected. The billions are just punctuation. Pretty impressive punctuation, Arjun noted. Pretty impressive brother, noticing that success comes in many fonts. We laughed, and it felt like healing. Not complete, some wounds take longer than 6 months to close. But genuine, built on new understanding rather than old assumptions. That night, I stayed for dinner for the first time in years. We talked about everything and nothing, Dia's patience, Arjun's pivot from consulting to social enterprise, my parents' newfound interest in technology. Normal family conversation, except now I was included as myself rather than the diminished version they'd needed me to be. I've been thinking, my mother said over dessert, about success and visibility. How we trained you all to perform your achievements, to make noise about every win. How that might have been wrong. Not wrong, I said. Limited. Some victories need witnesses. Others need privacy to grow strong enough to withstand scrutiny. You grew strong, my father said. Despite us, not because of us. I grew strong because the weight of your disappointment taught me to lift heavier things. Not ideal, but effective. We could have just supported you, my mother said quietly. You couldn't support what you couldn't see. And I couldn't show you what you weren't ready to understand. Timing matters in family as much as technology. And now? Dia asked. Is the timing right now? I looked at them, my family, flawed but trying, limited but expanding, learning to see success in stillness and ambition in quiet. Now's perfect, I said. A year later, I stood on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange, preparing to ring the opening bell. NovaPay's IPO had priced at $47 per share, valuing the company at $8.3 billion. The financial press called it the debut of the decade. My family stood in the crowd below, wearing matching NovaPay t-shirts my mother had insisted on making. Proud of our lazy daughter, they read, because my family had learned to laugh at their blindness rather than hide from it. Richard stood beside me, grinning. Ready to be visible, Ghost CEO? As ready as someone who spent a decade in shadows can be. You know what's funny? The receptionist desk at Pacific National. We've turned it into a shrine. There's a plaque. Maya Patel built a billion-dollar empire from this spot while everyone thought she was answering phones. That's embarrassing. That's inspiring. Every entry-level employee who sees it knows that revolutions can start anywhere. The bell ceremony began. As I placed my hand on the button that would officially take NovaPay public, I thought about the journey. 10 years of being called lazy while working 18-hour days. A decade of family dinners where my achievements went unmentioned because they went unseen. Thousands of hours building in silence while others performed their hustle. Any words for the press? Richard asked. I looked at the cameras, knowing my parents would be watching, that Arjun had taken the day off to witness this, that Dia was streaming from the hospital between surgeries. Success doesn't always announce itself, I said. Sometimes it works quietly at a desk everyone dismisses. Sometimes it builds revolutions while others call it lazy. Sometimes the most powerful changes come from the people you'd least expect, working in ways you don't recognize, achieving things you can't see until they're too big to ignore. I pressed the button. The bell rang out across the trading floor, announcing NovaPay to the world. But more than that, it announced the validation of every quiet achiever who'd been dismissed as lazy, every innovator who'd been called unmotivated, every revolutionary who'd chosen building over broadcasting. The crowd erupted in applause. On the floor below, my family was crying, holding each other, finally witnessing the ambition they'd missed for so long. Later, at the celebration dinner, my mother pulled me aside. I need to tell you something, she said. That interview you gave, about true innovation requiring the willingness to be misunderstood. I've been thinking about it for months. And I understand now that we were the ones who misunderstood. We saw stillness and called it laziness. We saw quiet and called it lack of ambition. We saw different and called it less than. You saw what you were trained to see. But you saw further. Despite us, around us, beyond us. That's not just success, Maya. That's transcendence. It's survival, I corrected. When the world misreads you, you can either exhaust yourself correcting them or quietly prove them wrong. I chose quiet proof. And we chose loud ignorance. You chose the only framework you had. Now you have a bigger one. She hugged me then, really hugged me, not the careful embraces of the past decade but something real and recognizing. My daughter, the revolutionary, she whispered. Hidden in plain sight at a reception desk. Your daughter, I whispered back. Hidden or visible, lazy or driven, everything or nothing. Just your daughter. That's everything, she said. That always was everything. We just couldn't see it. The New York Times ran a profile the next day. The ghost CEO steps into the light. How Maya Patel built a fintech empire while her family called her lazy. It went viral, not because of the billions or the IPO, but because of the universal truth it touched. How many of us are building quietly while the world calls us lazy? How many revolutions start at desks everyone dismisses? How many families miss miracles because they're looking for the wrong signs? My inbox flooded with messages from other quiet builders, other dismissed dreamers, other lazy revolutionaries who'd been working in shadows while the world mistook stillness for stagnation. You gave us permission to be unseen, one message read. To build without performing. To succeed without spectacle. Thank you. I printed that one, hung it in my office next to my parents' homemade t-shirts and a photo from Arjun's graduation, the night everything changed. Because that's what real success looks like. Not the IPO or the billions or the magazine covers, but the moment your family finally sees you. The moment quiet achievement gets recognized not for its volume but for its value. The moment the world realizes that lazy is sometimes just another word for efficient, that stillness can be more productive than motion, that the biggest revolutions often happen at the smallest desks. My name is Maya Patel. I spent 10 years being called lazy while building an empire. I answered phones while answering the question of how money should move in the digital age. I sat still while racing past everyone who confused motion with progress. And now, finally visible after a decade in shadows, I can say this: sometimes the laziest person in the room is actually the one working hardest. They're just working in dimensions others can't see, building futures others can't imagine, achieving things that don't fit conventional frameworks of effort and ambition. To everyone who's been called lazy while building quietly, your time is coming. Your work matters. Your stillness is not stagnation, it's strategy. Your quiet is not absence, it's presence so powerful it doesn't need to announce itself. Until it does. And when that moment comes, when someone finally sees what you've built in silence, the world will have to recalibrate its definition of ambition. Just ask my family. They're still learning that their laziest daughter was actually their most driven. They just couldn't see the drive because it didn't look like desperation. It looked like quiet confidence in work that would speak for itself. And it did. At $8.3 billion and climbing, it spoke volumes. But the real volume isn't in the valuation. It's in the validation of everyone who's ever been dismissed for working differently, achieving quietly, succeeding invisibly. We're not lazy. We're just efficient enough to achieve without performing our effort. And that, more than any IPO, is revolutionary. Different paths. Same destination. Finally seen. That's my story, how a decade of being called lazy led to a fintech revolution and a family revelation that changed everything. How answering phones became answering the future of finance. How sitting still became racing ahead of an entire industry. If you've ever been called lazy while building something extraordinary, if you've been dismissed as unmotivated while quietly changing the world, if you've had to choose between visible effort and invisible impact, I see you. Your work matters. Your quiet counts. Your revolution is valid, witnessed or not. Drop a comment below sharing your own story of building in silence while others called you lazy. Where are you watching from? What empires are you constructing while the world mistakes your stillness for stagnation? And please, hit that subscribe button if you believe that success doesn't always announce itself, that ambition can be quiet, and that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody notices until it's too late. Thank you for sharing my journey from lazy daughter to fintech revolutionary. Thank you for understanding that effort isn't always visible, that progress doesn't always make noise, and that sometimes the biggest achievements happen at the smallest desks. Until next time, keep building quietly, working invisibly, and remembering motion isn't progress. Progress is progress. And it doesn't always look like hustle. Different paths. Same destination. Finally home.